out of line, but as Chief Williams leaves and this is his last day with us, I would like to recognize him and thank him again for all his years of service to us.
Thank you, Chief. We're not going to give you an opportunity to speak because you'll just stay too long up here. Go home.
I actually have a life to get to.
Thank you. Alice, you may proceed.
Oh, okay. This is a request for approval for the mayor and the city administrator to sign a contract with RKG Associates, Inc. for the Strategic Economic Development Plan in the amount of $103,775. The invitations to bid were mailed out early last year and mid last year, and we received approximately 20 bids. Those bids were reviewed and shortlisted to 5 firms. The 5 firms were interviewed by the evaluation committee, and RKG Associates was selected as the lowest responsible bidder for the amount of the $103,775. Since this matter was brought before both the Administration and Finance Committee and the Community Development and Transportation Committee, staff has gone back and revised the timeline to show the actual completion of the plan occurring after the comprehensive plan, the Imagine Roswell. In fact, the comprehensive plan has to be completed by June 30th, no later than June 31st, in order to meet the requirements for the state and DCA review. With that said, staff would recommend approval, and if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
My first question would be, I assume this project's going to be done in phases and there are deliverables as this project goes forward.
Yes, sir.
If the council halfway through this project is not satisfied with the progress, do we have the option of saying, we appreciate what you've done through this date, but not to continue it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Other questions council members may have? I was not present at the committee meeting in which this was discussed, so I'd like to make my comments now before we vote on this. Both Mr. Gronholm and Mr. Mims were brought up the point that Roswell needs to make some changes if we're going to see economic development, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. If we're not going to see, if we continue to do business as we have currently done, it's going to take more than good marketing for Roswell to see economic development. It's going to take some changes. Mr. Gronholm talked about the need for incentives for redevelopment to see changes in economic development. I agree with him. Lonnie Mims talked about the tools that it would need, and we talked about shared parking, which is something I'm very much an advocate of, and shared retention ponds, which I've been a big proponent for, and central improvements, community improvement districts and tools and opportunity zones, all of those things which are important. My biggest concern about this is that I have not seen a consensus on how to redevelop it in the 10 years that this council's been talking about it. Until we reach a consensus of what we want to see in this town, we're not going to get redevelopment. I want to back up by saying I am very encouraged by the involvement of the business community in supporting this economic development plan. I think what has been missing is the involvement of the business community. It's to make changes, this council has to go out on a limb, has to make some hard decisions. And until this council gets political support for change, it's not going to make change. Because change always upsets some people. And up until now, I have not seen the business community involved. So I'm very encouraged by this business community involvement. And I think that's what will make this difference in this being successful. But if this business community assumes that, oh, we got this thing approved, we can go back home and go back to business, and it will flow smoothly along, you're going to be very upset with the outcome. Because it's going to take the business community not just to support this, but to take the leadership on economic development in Roswell. Because ultimately, that's who creates economic development, not the city, but the business community. So, for the few folks who stayed along here, I encourage you to stay involved, because without your involvement, we will not be successful. We will have the same result we've had in the past, and that's coming up with economic redevelopment plans which are not feasible, which don't work because we don't have the business side, we don't have the feasibility side in there. So with this timeline and with the understanding that if that we need to have a consensus of this council on a vision for Roswell and imagine Roswell where we're going in 20 years, if we can have that in place, we can have a successful development plan. But if we cannot reach a consensus on this council of where this city is going to go, we will have wasted $100,000. So with the assurance that that this council is going to come up with a plan for the city, and the hope that that plan, with the involvement of the business community, is a economically feasible plan, I will support this. But it's with conditions and grave reservations that I will support spending this money. But unless this council comes up with a vision after this comprehensive plan, it's not going to be successful. So let's reach a consensus. Let's decide where we're going to go. Let's make some hard choices with the participation of the business community. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Well, further discussion. I don't know. But Councilmember Price has questions about the selection process.
There's no doubt that this is an idea that we need desperately in the city, and because of that, this was put in the budget for fiscal year 2011. So we knew going into this year that we were planning to do this. My concern has been the process subsequent to the appropriation of the money, and that is that I don't know that we've had enough input into this to make it feasible to start immediately. I do see that in tonight's packet that the time frame has been pushed back a little bit, and I think that that's wise, because I think that we can perhaps hone in on our goals for this group prior to it really getting moving. And I'm a little concerned on, and I'll admit I have not seen the RFP, and I regret that, but I was not part of the process. So, and it's my own fault for not insisting upon seeing it, but I do see the project understanding, which was provided to us, and it just starts with Section 4, so I'm not sure what Sections 1, 2, and 3 include, but I do notice that I'm a little concerned about this project kickoff meeting with a steering committee, and the steering committee comprised of leaders of credible local housing agencies, social, civic, policy, advocacy, academic, business and development associations, networks, and systems. I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure who those people would be and how large a group that would be. So that concerns me. It also concerns me that at the project kickoff meeting of that committee, and I don't know how that committee is selected, One of the questions is, what are the city's short-term and long-term goals for economic development? So are we going to cede the answer to that question to the steering committee, of which we haven't decided how they would be selected? So I guess what I'm saying is there are a whole lot of procedural questions to be answered here before we get this group moving, and that it will be received, their report, and how specific it will be. At the committee meeting the other day, we talked about the entity that's being considered for the contract and their history in other communities and locales, and how what we're asking them to do is considerably different than some of the things they have done in the past. And a municipal body such as we are really has limitations in what we can create out there. We can create an environment, we can support infrastructure, we can make sure we have zoning adequate for our plans, but we can't create the jobs and the business that we want to attract. So I think going forward, we have to be very, very clear about how we select and direct the group to have very specific deliverables that we can utilize and go forward with a sound direction and steps towards some economic improvement. That's really all I need to say.
What do you propose we do? This is your department.
I think the council ought to take this up as one of its primary discussions when we sequester ourselves in our day-long discussion, and come up with some very specific requests of this entity, how we would like them to narrow their focus, because I think a lot of this looks like repetition of the comprehensive plan, and we really won't need them to do that. So I would propose that we approve a contract with some provisos that council take an active role in setting up the steering committee and other parameters for their deliverables.
Mrs. Price, Councilmember Price, I can support a work session to discuss this, because if that's the council's pleasure to discuss this further and how we implement it, how we set it up, how we organize it. I will not be supporting that this be a subject of a retreat, because I don't like to see day-to-day city business being discussed at retreats. It's getting away from open and transparent meetings. We've got a lot of folks who are interested in this subject, and I don't see a reason that we can't discuss it in Roswell at a work session if that's our goal, is to have a discussion. If our goal is to have a discussion outside of the presence of our citizens, I don't understand it. So I can and that's the comment with our retreat. As far as what we do tonight, do you have a motion?
Just to respond to what you said, I agree completely. A work session would be in order prior to the specifics of their charge. Then again, what are we signing a contract for if we haven't given them the specifics of their charge? But I do think that there's some questions here in this that are listed under this project kickoff meeting that I doubt that even council could agree upon, and I think that.
Well, we've got three options here, but perhaps some more. We have a subject tonight, and we're going to hear from the public after we hear from Betty Price, because I know y'all are set through all of this, and some of you have already spoken, but you'll have an opportunity to speak again. Councilmember Price, before they get up and speak, I'd like to at least have a motion and a second so they know what we're discussing. And you may not get a second, you may get a second. But as I see it, we can have a motion to approve, we could have a motion to deny, we could have a motion that sort of amends it, or we could have a motion to defer. So can you put it into one of those categories and see if we can get a second?
Well, having spoken to several people at the Department of Community Affairs today and the chair and chair-elect of the Fulton County Development Authority today also, they all suggested that we not rush into this if we are not clear as to what exactly we want to have them provide for us. And I think we need a little time to discuss it. I know we rushed it into tonight's meeting, which was not normally a general council meeting. I'm happy to defer it, but I don't want to suffer the criticism that we're looking to be stalling or ignoring this need. But I do think that council needs a little opportunity to get more input and plan a little better. So I would move to defer it to the first meeting in February.
Let's talk about that. I suggested deferring to a work session or a committee meeting. I think it might take more than a committee meeting versus deferring it to, and we can, I don't know if we have time for a work session. Mrs. Love, if we defer to a work session, it would be we could defer to a work session following the first regularly called meeting. Do we know how busy that schedule is going to be?
We do have a work session scheduled, but certainly we can rearrange that. We do have an important topic that night, and that is the pension discussion that has been delayed because of weather and everything else. So that is one that I would not recommend changing. We do have something else that night, but we could move it around. You could have a special called work session. I mean, there's a variety of options depending on what the goal in the work session is.
And I'm just trying to give Councilmember Price options here. I think if we defer it to another meeting, we may not have everything worked out. Councilmember Price, what's your preference? And then we'll hear from Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Yeah, I think my assumption was that we would have a work session prior to that meeting in some fashion.
I hate calling work sessions other than on council. I'll try to schedule them on council meeting nights because I don't want to take up more of council members' lives than I need to. If the council member wishes, we could have a special call meeting, but my preference would be to try to do it on a Monday night following it. And again, is there a reason that is if we push this back, if we make the decision within the month of February, are we going to be able to meet the rest of our time frame?
No, sir. We will not have them available for the comp plan analysis and the focus area workshops.
So when do we need to make a decision to have it available?
Well, tonight would be wonderful because then we would have an opportunity to work out the contract, and they have to sign, we have to sign. We have to work through the procurement process.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Two questions on the contract, and it's not as clear as it perhaps should be, but what was the plan for creating the steering committee? And I assume that would be put together.
Yeah. Let me clarify that. Like many of the plans that this city has done and other cities have done, including economic development plan, there's always a steering committee, much like we have at CPAC. But this would be a committee that would be made up of folks that would be more economic development and business focused and residents, of course. The response that was given to you was just basically that bidder's response to what we had put in the scope of work. It is clearly understood by everyone involved that whatever steering committee is in place would be appointed and approved by this body.
And I guess that's the answer I was hoping for.
Yes.
Generally, we're not turning it over to this contractor to create that and do their own thing.
Absolutely not.
And then also, isn't it, and again, it probably should be more clear in what we're looking at, but isn't it part of this plan for us to actually come up with those elements and things that we want to do and we're not setting that prior to that contract? Again, perhaps some of that should be clear, but that's part of
yes, sir.
Deliverable is to come up with that aspect and the things that we get to consensus on. So I hear the concerns and understand those, I think, and agree with the elements of them, but I think that we are set up to deal with them maybe not as clearly as written out perhaps, but in the way that this should go forward. So the sooner we get to that, the quicker we get those things done and move forward on. Not sure that's the best English sentence.
I'm not sure I understand it, but I appreciate the sentiment.
All right.
Councilmember Wynn.
I'm sorry, Mr. That's so cute. I think I said this in committee when there were some concerns raised and some other issues about narrowing the focus. I'm not for that. You put on blinders and that's all you see. I mean, you'll be just straight out nothing, no periphery whatsoever. And I think that what we need and to make a good comprehensive plan and a good economic plan, because you and I talked about this, that I sat on a lot of committees when I was with Fulton County as a community advocate and plus working for Chairman Ken. And one of my concerns was we weren't going to go deep enough. We were not going to have a lot of variety. We were not going to be diverse. We were not going to look at who was going to go on these steering committees. That was my concern. And I think my concern was alleviated or, somewhat from that committee. So I am not a proponent to tell the consultant what we want, because I think that's what's got us in trouble before. We're not diverse enough. We're not looking at what Roswell can be. Now, me, I like to have a menu, A, B, C, D, and E, and we can pick and choose. Yes, this is going to be great for Roswell. Or what? Are you serious? There's no way we're going to do this in Roswell. But if we don't have that opportunity, I think we're going to not have what we would like to have for Roswell in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And to the mayor's credit about a consensus on the council, there's a different council now. There's a different posse in town now. And I think when you're looking at the people sitting up here, we want what's best for Roswell, and I think we're going to have the consultant bring it to us, and then we'll decide what we want to do with Roswell. But I do not want to restrict either the consultant or the staff or the steering committee or whoever we pick. I don't want to put any parameters on them, except for bring the best plan that you can to us. Thank you.
Councilmember Diamond.
I think Becky said a lot of what I was thinking, but I look at this more as a reality check on what's possible. It's not going to be, let's decide what we'll do and then let's see what's available to us. If we don't, we can decide we want to be the head of NASA locations too, but that's not feasible. So, I think somebody who has the bigger picture and has the resources to give us the better picture is certainly more equipped than we are to know what's outside of us and look at us with unbiased opinions. And I would like to see, I feel like I've been reading the RFP for a month and a half. I don't know. I know Alice probably feels like I have, because I've asked her a gajillion questions and she has written them down in detailed form, and I appreciate her patience while I went through it. I know there are always, to Betty's point, there are always things in consultant plans that sound like, well, why in the world do they need to do that? And I think that's part of the game. I don't believe that's the majority of the time, and that was a lot of my questions, was how much of their time is devoted to this stuff that we can probably do ourselves and how much of it is really outside information. I spent some time with the Economic Development Director at Alpharetta and talked about how they did their plan and what they might do differently and how they can wind theirs into ours. And I think there's a lot of room for us to do some really exciting things, but I don't feel like we're rushing government time. Rush just is not it's not something I'm relating to on that front. But I would be in support of moving ahead.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, the economic development plan is the missing piece here. We have a comprehensive plan that we're spending a lot of time and energy on, and we need to make sure that we can implement that. I talked a little bit about that at the work session the other day at the committee meeting, that we need to have a plan that we can implement. And it's not just a comprehensive plan, but it's this economic development plan. So we need to have our consultant tell us what are the critical pieces, what are the things they're looking for, what are the things they have seen in other cities that work, and what's unique about Roswell that they would recommend we pursue and push forward and truly market. And I think our business community is a critical component of that. They really need to be an integral part of this whole process. They need to give us feedback. They need to tell our consultants what works and what doesn't work. As Mr. Gronholm pointed out, he's been here several decades. He knows what works. He knows what doesn't work. So his input and input of his colleagues are invaluable to that process. And the world has changed. We no longer have the luxury of sitting back and picking and choosing what businesses we want to locate here. We're in a competition. We're in a competition with all our neighbors. We're in a competition with Metro Atlanta. Unless we step up to the plate and figure out a way to be competitive, we're not even going to be in the running. So this gives us an opportunity to step up, gives us an opportunity to be in the forefront, to be proactive, to get out in front of these businesses and help our local economy.
Councilman Orleans.
Jared, I know what you were saying earlier, and I kind of agree with you. We've had some lack of consensus in the past in council and where we're going and different opinions and so forth. But I think this council, everyone included, is all very aware of how economic development and redevelopment is needed for the city, and that we need to consider all ideas. Anything that we need to look at, we have to consider, and then we will say what's good, what's bad, and do it in the Roswell way. So I just think we need to move forward with this program.
Other comments? In the 13 years I have been mayor, I've seen a lot of plans. I'm sure we've spent over $1 million in plans. I have not yet seen a plan successful to when this council did not have an idea where we were going. I don't know where we're going right now. I hope that, what I'm hearing is we'll know it when we see it. Well, that's never happened in the past. And I hope this council can come together. Now, the council has always had the best interest of Roswell in mind. Every council I've served on has had the best interest in mind. We've not always had the same idea of what is best for Roswell. That's been the problem. And I hope that this council will reach a consensus. But I will tell you, every time in the past that we've begun a plan without some goal in mind, we've wasted our money. And right now, until we have a comprehensive plan, I think that's where we create our goal in mind. It's easy to say we want redevelopment. It's much harder to say what that redevelopment looks like. Until we reach a consensus of what we want to see, I think we're going to be wasting our money. With that, we still don't have a motion. Councilmember Price, she had she did you make a motion to defer? I don't know if it'll pass or not, but let's get a motion on the table so we can move.
I moved to have a work session followed by a meeting on the next at the next available council meeting, which I believe is the 14th of February.
You're asking, so we'd have a special call work session before that.
Yes.
We have a motion for a special call work session and bring this to a vote at the next regular council meeting. Is there a second? Dies for lack of a second. Does someone else wish to make a motion? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Again, I understand the concerns that you're both expressing and agree with them at some point, but I think that we work through those as part of this process, and then the sooner we get moving, because it does tie into the comprehensive plan, as Alice has said, the better. So I make a motion to approve the contract.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt. We'll hear from the floor. Anyone wish to comment? They're probably smart. Don't argue past the sale. Further discussion? Councilmember Price, anything you'd like to add?
I just think we're expecting the moon, and we haven't given parameters adequate enough to give us an answer that's going to be useful. I hope I'm wrong, but the answers, the questions on that page, whatever it was, on the project kickoff, I don't know who's going to be answering those questions in 1 hour, but we haven't answered them yet, so I don't know why we expect another group to answer those questions then to guide this entity. And that's going to be key, is who's guiding this entity. And if we haven't defined that yet, then...
Mrs. Wakefield, when does our planner need to know what this steering committee is going to be telling them? When is this? What's the steering committee's job again?
The steering committee will function much like the CPAC committee. As staff with the consultant works through, gather information, we will present that information to the steering committee, and the steering committee will basically, there's a sounding board is what the steering committee's function is.
Let me see if I've got this. What I'm hearing from Councilmember Wynn is we want you to put all the possible options that could be feasible on the table.
Yes, sir.
And so that would come to council. That's not a steering committee decision.
I mean, there's the only decisions to be made will be by this body. I mean, the steering committee.
I'm trying to figure
like
what does the steering committee do if we're just saying we don't want any limitations or any parameters. This group is the goal. Council's goal is to say what is economically feasible, not politically feasible. That's what I'm hearing. And what is the role of the steering committee in that? If that's our goal?
The steering committee will look at the information, digest the information, and make recommendations that will be part of a plan that will be presented to this body as a for approval. It is, I think, and Councilmember Wynn can correct me, we should say everything. We will, just like much we do with the comp plan, we will look at everything from an economic development standpoint. For example, we hear a lot about, well, businesses go to Alpharetta, they go to Sandy Springs. They have Class A office space. Is Class A office space one of those target industries we should be looking at? If the consensus is yes, then there are some things or some decisions that this body has to make. So we will look at that type of thing.
Well, here's what I'm trying to figure out. The comprehensive plan is going to be telling us where we want to go, where we want to be in 2030.
Yes.
Now, how does that dovetail with this group? You know, I'm just thinking, shouldn't this group know where we want to be in 2030 before we propose where we're going? Because how do you dovetail? To me, the way you dovetail, you say this is where we're going, and then everything follows that.
This group,
and I just don't understand how you're saying we're going to say before we know where we're going, we're going to come up with what the options are. But it just seems like it's inefficient.
If you look at the schedule, you will see that the comprehensive plan will be done by the last of June, the last of July. It has to be, because we have to meet the deadline for ARC and DC approval. What the blue shows here for the economic development plan is basically doing the research, doing the data, running the analysis. The actual
analysis of what?
The analysis of all the different data, the analysis, and Bill may be able to help me here, he understands it better, but the economic development analysis, that type of data.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Related to the stakeholder committee, one of the things they will do in looking at all the options, I think one of the things that's been important as we've embarked upon a different way of looking at things and getting citizen input is the representatives on that stakeholder committee that the mayor and council will appoint will represent different disciplines and different factions. So one of their roles is to give us initial reaction or feedback about some of those many, many options. So if the plan brings forward 38 options for discussion by the mayor and council, we can already say that the stakeholder committee has reacted favorably to 28 of them, and the other ones they have concerns about because of X, Y, and Z, because they're out there doing it. They are the business community. They do represent the makeup of our business community, residents, whoever y'all place on the steering committee. So that is one of their roles. So you're not going blindly into saying, well, okay, now go out and get input as to what people want. We may do that once you decide and narrow down those options, and then you'll send us back out to get further, more comprehensive reaction.
But here's what I don't get. Somebody can explain this to me. We're coming up with a comprehensive plan that says this is where we want to be in 2030. And that comprehensive plan may say, as a lot of comprehensive plans have said before, we want to be a city of 100,000 people with the same sort of makeup we have right now. It may say we want to be a city of 200,000 people. It may say we want to be a city of low density, in which we don't encourage a lot of Class A office space to come in. And I don't know how we're going to dovetail, until you make those basic decisions, how you dovetail this economic development plan, which may be 180 degrees from where this city wants to go. I just don't understand it.
Let me try
I
this.
just haven't gotten it. I haven't gotten the picture, because, it's sort of like saying, I need to know where we're going before I know which path we need to take to get there. And you're saying, well, let's consider all the paths, and these are all these thousands of paths, and then we'll come back but that's maybe not where we're going, and it just seems to be a very inefficient process. Go ahead. I'm slow, so you have to be patient.
That's okay. The
with
comprehensive plan is very broad-based, high level. The comprehensive plan looks at land use, it looks at housing, it looks at economic development, it looks at transportation, it looks at natural resources, it looks at culture and natural resources, looks at intergovernment relationship. What the comprehensive plan does not do is does not give you the strategies to implement to enhance and expand your existing businesses. It does not, more importantly for us from a marketing standpoint, it does not tell you what your target industry is. And so the economic development plan digs deeper. It gets it more in the weeds when it comes to how the city wants to compete.
I understand this. I'm just saying maybe I'm getting in the weeds in a whole different pasture than the pasture I want to be in. That's what bothers me, is we're going to be doing all of this looking at weeds in a pasture on the other side of, in the other part of the world, which we don't have any intention of going to. We've got to, first of all, anybody on council, and Nancy was first. Nancy?
Nancy's making a scene in the corner. I would argue that we probably could have done the economic development first and been better off. If you can go out into the world and say, here are industries, and other cities have done this, where, we're this little town that's lost their biggest industry. What else can we do? They bring in people that look at what is globally being done and what industries are in the growth mode and what industries are looking for. And my guess is we're going to be looking in the $50 to $500 person business range. And what are our options in there? What kind of growth businesses, energy companies, technology companies, whatever it is, what are those companies and how are they growing and how can we tap into that market? That's what we're looking for. And then, once we knew what our possibilities are, because, again, it's not logical to go chase an industry. Right now, Charlotte has pretty much cornered the banking headquarter industry. I don't know that it would benefit us to go after being a financial hub. But maybe there's another avenue that we've never even seen before that could be an option that we haven't even thought of. And, if we knew that was an option when we were doing our comp plan, we might look at it totally differently. So I would go the flip way and argue that we probably could have done that first and saved ourselves a little time.
Well, now you've given me a parameter where we're looking. And if that's the consensus of the council and we want to limit it to where we're looking there, now I know what you're talking about. But that's the first time I've heard an expression of this is where we want to look. And if we can tell if that's our goal, and that's where we want them to look, now we know where they're supposed to look. So you've limited the field substantially, and that helps me. And if that's the consensus of this council, that will give us some direction. Other comments? I think we're ready for a vote. Y'all have listened to me long enough. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're adjourned. Thank you for coming tonight.